afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another Did You Know series. Before we get started, just a reminder, please send in your questions if they relate to the topic today. But if they relate to other topics or you just have a question of the panel or of law enforcement in general, please send those in. And as always, like and hit your notifications so you can stay connected to the Sheriff's Office. So let's get started. So did you know May is Mental Health Awareness Month? And so during this month, the Washoe County Sheriff's Office, with many of my panelists here, are joining the national momentum of raising awareness for mental health. We want you, our community, to know that we are here to support, to educate the public, and to advocate for services and programs to support people with mental illness and their families. We also are here so that we provide this not only to the public, but to first responders and Washoe County Sheriff's Office employees who serve you every single day. So let me give you a few facts. According to the state of Nevada, 1 in 4 Nevadans suffer from some type of mental health illness. Suicide is our second leading cause of death amongst people ages 10 to 34, and it's the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And that is something I know all the panels today and all of our organizations, we are focused on reducing. And so I wanted to bring together local partners from our community to discuss mental health and what services are available. So if you're out there and you're wondering, how do I access? Where do I go? Well, hopefully today we're going to provide some of those answers. So let me introduce my panel and then we'll go around and ask some questions. So starting over to my right, I have Derek Reed, Battalion Chief from Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. I have Don Butterfield, Chief Operating Officer for Reno Behavioral Health Care. I have Vicki La Versa, the Program Director of Reno Behavioral Health Care. I have Dr. Narizi of the Reno Tahoe Pain Associates. I have Ryan Simpson from the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. He is our clinician. And then I have Sergeant Koss. He is a sergeant here at the Sheriff's Office, but also one of our supervisors over Pier. So let me go back. I'm going to start with you, Derek. Can you talk about what is your role at Truckee Meadows as it has to do with mental health, and how do you provide that to your employees?
So the role of mental health within the fire service, and it's very much like the law enforcement side, is to make sure that our responders are at their top of their game, physically, mentally. I was a developer of the mental health and wellness program for Truckee Meadows Fire, which that program encompasses a peer support team, a chaplain group, and also a licensed clinician that we vetted, that we embedded into our department, much like Ryan Simpson. We took it a step beyond and collaborated with other first responder entities, law enforcement, military, EMS responders, 911 dispatchers, and hospital professionals, and created a not-for-profit. Through a collaborative group effort through the Nevada Peer Support Network, what we did is kind of grab the best of the best from all the different departments and brought them into one place to where it was a shared resources. We do have a resiliency center that we stood up at the beginning of this year. It is exclusively for first responders. We do everything from wellness programs to, if there's a critical incident, we provide resources and a space for them to do their debriefs. And we do wellness classes mostly, and education. And yoga. Mindfulness meditation, everything that's surrounding basically the warrior culture, we make it relevant, and we build that first responder up. And the big reason why, going back from the beginning, is so we can provide the best service to the community, so we're at our best physically and mentally.
Well, that's awesome. And so, Don and Vicki, can you tell me what is your staff seeing and talk about the services that Reno Behavioral Health Care provides?
Okay. Well, what we're seeing is a huge gambit of mental health issues that are coming across, certainly coming out of the COVID pandemic. We're seeing an increase in substance abuse. We're seeing an increase in major depressive disorder. We're seeing general anxiety disorder. We're also seeing a lot of people that really struggled during the last year and a half, and being able to, what do I do? They really were stuck at home in a lot of the cases, and got themselves in some kind of trouble in different areas. So we're seeing that come in an influx from pediatric to geriatric, seeing all levels of people coming in with stress. One of the biggest things, though, and the wonderfulness of panels like this is being able to say, wow, the stigma is reducing. People are reaching out. People are asking for help. And that doesn't happen a lot of the time. And so being able to provide that service, either in an acute setting or a residential setting, has been so helpful. And so it's nice to see that stigma come down as more people access help.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And so, Dr. Narizi, at the Tahoe Pain Associates, discuss how chronic pain triggers anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues, and explain what you offer and what's the holistic approach you provide.
Thanks, Sheriff Balaam, for inviting me to the panel. This is one of the topic that is very close to my heart because that's basically what we face every day with chronic pain and anxiety and depression, and where we are, how we treat, and what we want to make sure that what we do helps the patient the most. And especially when it comes to our community, people in our community, and also first responders, that they do hard work to provide the best care, to provide the best quality of life for our people in our community. So stress level is high. The injury can happen. Pain is there. But what can be done? One thing that is important for us to know, pain and anxiety and depression, they go hand in hand. So you have to understand the brain itself uses the same basically chemicals, neurochemicals, and those neurotransmitters that regulate the mood, plus they regulate the pain signal. So you can easily say that if the pain is so bad, it becomes chronic, your mood can change, your anxiety can change, because it's not your fault. Those neurotransmitters being used by brain, they work on both sides. They affect the emotion side, they affect the pain side. So that's why you would see some patients who have to get the pain over time becomes chronic. They are also depressed and anxious. But also, we do have people who have depression or anxiety. They may present themselves with pain. So based on estimated studies, typically 50% of the patients who are depressed and they go to see their physicians, primary care physicians, the first complaint is about their pain. So they may present with pain. Although when you look at the imaging or rest of the profile, you cannot find very severe underlying disease. But the fact that they come and present themselves is because of the depression. So regardless of what we do to treat the pain, it's not going to get better if we do not address the anxiety and depression with it. So it's a key component for us to understand what the physiological problem is, why the anxiety and depression it work the same as pain, and then give the patient the insight. And comes from, sometimes it's hard for you as a person to know that, is this really a pain? Because you have the pain, but the pain may come from your depression, anxiety, and may not be truly a pain. So you're not just basically making up the symptoms. No, you truly believe that's a pain. So it comes from the expert and do the studies, the peer-reviewed questionnaires, surveys that you do may help us to understand how to treat. But when the pain is true pain and comes from, for example, injury, we know that if we don't treat that correctly, that can cause the depression and anxiety. And also, the person who is depressed can become worse. So treatment of the pain can become more difficult if we do not address the anxiety, depression. And if we do not treat the pain, we also make the anxious and make the anxiety and depression worse. So what we do at Reno Tahoe Pain Associates, we want to identify these patients. They come and we go through these peer-reviewed questionnaires, identify how much the anxiety is behind this, what the issue is, and what the pathology is, and we treat both. And we expect that just to see the changes over time. There are a lot of treatments that can vary from maybe simple injections that can be done to nerve blocks, but majority of them we also follow with their functionality tests, with anxiety tests, and a psychological distress index to see if there is an improvement. And then we opened United Pain Urgent Care as the first pain urgent care in U.S. So we are also introducing a new concept that when that injury happens, you believe the pain is acute, just come because to get the right treatment. What we're afraid that people who are also have problem with depression, anxiety, they're also more prone to abuse and misuse the medication, pain medication, and opioid, and down the road alcohol. So our job is to prevent that from happening. If the treatment is right at the right person, the right time, the right treatment, we might have a chance to see that we are not only treating some, not the depression and anxiety and the injury associated with it, but also we might be able to prevent some of the opioid dependencies with the pain medication. Some people can be more prone. So it's a wide variety of things can be done when you consider pain and anxiety and depression together as one entity to treat.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Of course.
So, Ryan,
Yes, sir.
unfortunately, we lost 2 members of our sheriff's office last year, and we were fortunate enough to bring you on board. And so, can you talk about what that mental health team involves here at the sheriff's office and what services our employees and their families, the team offers?
Absolutely. As you know, out of that tragedy, out of losing 2 dear employees to suicide, the county commissioners heard our call finally and created a position. And then through that, I was able to be selected and gracefully selected as the clinician for the Washington County Sheriff's Office. What we've noticed so far is that really the hardest part of providing this type of service is creating the avenue where people feel safe to use it. And so the first year and 3 months, I've really focused my attention on embedding, creating an environment of safety. We know that trauma creates an element of distrust. We know that law enforcement itself and first responder work can create an environment of distrust. And so we're almost against a double whammy when we go to try to offer somebody to really speak what's on their mind and talk about the injury or the emotional stuff that they're going through. So that's really what the focus has been as this year has progressed and into the next year. I've come to find that people are reaching out and it's becoming very successful. I've partnered closely with our peer team. The most important aspect of that is I know that I'm one voice and one person, but with them and us working in conjunction, they're able to reach, they're 40 people strong and can get out and really, if they trust in me, that they can suggest that somebody reach out to me and really identify the things that I can't identify because I don't see them all the time. And these guys work next to each other and they probably don't trust me right away, but they trust their peers. And so I really have been working closely on developing that relationship so that peer support feels comfortable referring me. And that's really caught on and that's been successful. And so the next phase has been, okay, I'm one clinician and there's nearly 1,000 employees with the sheriff's office. So how do I make sure the worst thing that can happen is somebody get to a point where they're ready to reach out and there's nobody there to receive their call. And so this last few months and probably last 6 months, really working closely with Battalion Chief Derek Reed and the Nevada Peer Support Network, that has been such a great resource for the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. And pretty soon you look around and here we are working together. We know that there might be times that the Truckee Meadows Fire Department doesn't have the resources we need, but the Sheriff's Office understands, hey, we have a great commodity to offer too. And so when these guys are down and being kicked around and they can rely on us and they have absolutely shown up for us as well. And so now you have policemen, firemen, everybody working together with the common goal of understanding mental health. And it has just been an amazing year and things are moving exponentially faster now. And more calls are happening and more people are reaching out and it's happening. And, it started as a pipe dream just a year and a few months ago. And now all of a sudden we actually have a functioning mental health team that people know that they can reach out to. And when they do, they get the care that they need. And we're building these great referral services within the community because we know it takes a village to treat this kind of stuff. We can't do it all on our own. And so those are the relationships we've been building.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. And so, Sergeant Koss, Ryan kind of hit on it.
Yes, sir.
So kind of go over some of the challenges that first responders have and what's the importance of peer support within our environment.
So a lot of challenges first responders face, like the stats that doctor gave us, there's a lot of mental health illnesses and we get called to and we try and help them or help those that are dealing with them in the street. And then unfortunately, a lot of the mental health people that have mental health illnesses end up in the jail. So we're dealing with them in the streets. They come to jail. We try and help them in the jail. And then, so we're dealing with people's bad day every day. A lot of times we see some stuff, we do some stuff, and that's where the peer team can come in for us. Is we work with Ryan and the other peer teams in the area, and we get a little specialized training. We can see if we're hurting or not, and we need help. And we just reach out to each other. We have commission staff on the peer team. We have dispatchers, animal control people that work in booking and all that. So we have all kinds of peers, chaplains, and Ryan's a big help. So we have lots of resources, lots of help. We keep an eye out for each other and send them to him or us. And sometimes it's a walk and talk, and that's, we can help each other out.
Wonderful. Well, so I have a couple questions for the group. So I'm going to throw them out, and whoever wants to answer, and then we have some for first responders. So, and you kind of hit on it, Vicki, we've had this pandemic, and I know for myself, being isolated for that year and not being able to go out, I think we took a lot of that for granted, some of the events we went to. And so as we opened up, you realized how we all missed that. But with that, it's caused people to lose their jobs. And so some are afraid to seek treatment based on the financial resources. So as a group, what would you tell somebody, here, pandemic or whatever reason, tragedy, or they just lost their job? And so now they are worried about that payment. So what can they do?
Well, I think that, I always try to look for the best in things. And one of the wonderful things that came out of COVID-19 was the ability to look at treatment in so many different alternative ways. And so instead of just going to the office and having a one-on-one and contacting insurance and hopefully supporting that, we've been able to really think outside the box. And now we're able to do Zoom. And we're able to go, wait a second, I can do Zoom, and with Zoom can come lesser costs. Also, some aspects when it comes to financial, because insurance is always an issue. It will be an issue probably well past our days. And regard to having, do group therapy. Group therapy can lessen the cost rather than a one-on-one session. So I really encourage people to kind of, reach out, ask their friends, ask their families. Word of mouth is really the best indicator of good service, is by being able to have a referral and do your homework. Go online, look. There's a lot of resources that will help people that are financially strapped. I think there's a lot of resources that we can do now that we haven't been able to do because it wasn't, standard industry. But now we're able to do those things. And I think that can be really positive in that aspect. One of the big issues, though, too, is adjusting to this new normal. What is our new normal? And we see a huge transition as people are having difficulty coming back into the world. And they've developed some anxiety being outside their home because they were there for, a year and a half. And so the Zoom can be a good way of transitioning, being that bridge from being in the home to getting outside the home and really kind of adjusting to that. I will say, if we just kind of segue a little bit to the chemical dependency aspect that a lot of people have really developed over the time and dealing with the opioid pandemic that we have, is being able to, here in this state, that if an agency, a rehabilitation center, receives state funding, then they have to provide a level of care on a sliding fee scale. They cannot deny due to inability to pay. And so I think a lot of people are frightened, not only because the stigma that substance abuse may have, but the cost of it. And it can be really reasonable if we just access it. But you have to do your homework.
Good to know. And I would say if somebody didn't know and they just called, you would be able to help direct them.
Absolutely.
Can I chime in on that? One of the things we offer, you had mentioned that payment can be a challenge for people, but one of the things we offer is free and confidential assessments that anybody that seeks us out and needs help, they can just call us at 775-393-2201. And we are available 24/7. We encourage anybody to seek help that might need it. Even if someone doesn't necessarily need hospitalization, we will always try to find a community resource that can help any individual that reaches out.
Wonderful. So let me ask this, and whoever wants to jump in. So who do you believe is at risk for suicide? And are there certain groups of people that are at higher risk than others? Anybody want to jump on that?
Typically, what we know, the older population is always at risk. And then the category is what are the risk factors? So mental health, addiction, opiate addiction, and also alcohol problems. Those are also the risk factors for make a patient or make a person at risk of suicide. Those are well-known factors. And then, but also it kind of goes down based on sometimes the race, and then the rest of that kind of basically a big list of who are the people at risk. But most important for us is to identify the people who are at risk, the friends, family, it's yourself. Anything that at any time, even there's hotlines that easily you can just call like national suicide hotlines 24 hours. These are easy. There's no cost associated with them. Just get an ask. There's nothing wrong just to call someone if they basically you stay anonymous with those and you just express your feeling. Sometimes you just get it out of your chest is the most important. But these are the people that we want to just kind of focus more. They can be at risk for suicide.
Can I just piggyback on that? I think one of the key factors is isolation. And certainly with the population of 85 and over, we see really a high incidence and increase in suicide. And so I think being able to, kind of bring those individuals, the importance of the senior centers and things like that. But isolation, regardless of any age, is a key factor of determining factor.
That's exactly.
So.
And when it feeds on itself is when you're depressed, you isolate yourself. And that isolation makes the depression worse. So it's a vicious circle. So you have to break that circle. So you need it. That's why if you're depressed, you need to get help before getting to the point that someone attempts or commits suicide. So we have to understand and act upon it right away.
And for those out there that either may not think they need help or maybe they have a family member, what are some warning signs of mental illness or suicide that we could educate the community on?
We know disordered sleep and eating patterns. We know if you're having difficulty sleeping, that's a huge warning sign for everything. So disordered, we have feelings of hopelessness. We have recent trauma or crisis. We certainly know that with the introduction of substances, whether it be opioid or alcohol, which is a predominant factor, that people are more likely to harm themselves if they're under the influence. And so beginning to isolate, as Dr. Naziri was talking about, and being able to just stay stuck, So, people aren't necessarily about ending their life. They're about wanting to stop the pain. And that's, I think, where we have to really look out. So, but if there's changes of personality, they begin isolating. Some depression presents as agitation. So it's not the poor me. It's the anger that you'll see. And somebody just outside of their normal range of emotions is a key factor.
Perfect. And let me throw some other first responders. So what are some ways employers can support staff?
I believe that employers can support staff by providing options. We have our Employees Assistance Program. We have our insurance. And I believe as many more resources that are available, that are options, creates that ability that if there's a few that aren't trusted for, whatever they think the trust issue is, not that it's not a trusted resource, but that they can go to a chaplain, they can go to a clinician, they can go to a peer, they can go do yoga. And that's what the employer is supporting are these programs that are out there to create that community and those stigma reduction, stress reduction practices that we really didn't think of, or we kind of had a stigma in itself 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So yeah, options.
And we kind of hit on it. Let me throw it out to you. Go ahead.
I was going to say not only options, but support those options, right? And support them to use them and to go and need the help. We got your back, whatever you need. I think that's huge. That's huge as well.
It's getting out of the silo of this is our organization. We're going to take care of our people. Sometimes to take care of your people, you have to refer and support other organizations to prop that one organization up.
I like that. And so you guys have already hit on it, but again, for those that are first responders out there or family members, why don't first responders ask for help?
That old school stigma. We're
Expectation.
supposed to help. We don't need the help.
Well, I think, sorry to be kind of
No, you can jump in.
monopolizing. When we look at the socialization of people who are the run-to people rather than the runaway people, they are taught to suppress. Because in order for you to run inside a burning building, you have to put aside that fear. In order for you to run away from to run into the gunfire rather than away, you have to be able to put that aside. And so what happens is we continue to push that aside. And that socialization will be very difficult to overcome. And then, of course, we're the helping profession. We don't need help, but we'll see that biggest burnout.
I totally agree with what you're saying. And in order for us to function in the high performance, high stress, high risk,
Yes.
there has to be that element where we shut it down. The trick is the reintegration back into who we were before we went and did that high risk.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's those practices that we need to, I always use an analogy of a surgeon. You don't want a surgeon that's emotionally charged right before surgery when they're working on you. You want them to be laser focused and doing the task at hand. That requires them to be mentally and physically sharp. But when that job is over for longevity purposes, they have to be able to transition to going back to who they were before they were that person in that moment.
It is, I think it's very hard. So put myself in a situation, yes, we have some sick patients, but you walk in an environment that your life can be threatened at one point, plus you can save. So it's just as the amount of stress you walk in is a different situation that me as a physician walk in. I don't know, I know that my life is not in danger when I walk in and face the environment to save lives. So it's very stressful, but I think that's what these panels are good. Raise awareness for our you have to say you are human. At the end of the day, you're like us, you're human. You need help as well. Don't be afraid. Go ask for the help as a police officer, law enforcement, first responder. At the end of the day, you and I are human, and if you feel that you need the help, these are the resources you have. And I think by raising that awareness all the time, just to make it easy, like diabetes, if your blood sugar is right there, go and ask for help. You just, okay, I get treatment. I change this lifestyle. So let's just get it to that point that our law enforcement people, our first responder, they get comfortable with that. It becomes like diabetes for them to treat and ask for treatment.
I really, sorry.
No,
Sheriff,
go ahead.
I really think it's a social construct where people believe that, and we've heard it forever, that if you're helping, that you don't necessarily reach out for help. And so even mentally, I think for a first responder, it can be a contradiction in their mind to think, okay, as soon as I reach out for help, I've basically taken myself out of the game. I can't keep doing what I'm doing. And so what I instill and what I try to relay to people is that it's not an either or culture. It's a both and. You can be a great helper because we know that you function in certain areas of your brain, your prefrontal cortex. When you're functioning and you're reacting, it's usually when you go home that you're in your limbic system and you're in your emotions and you're thinking about that. So we really function from two different areas of our brain. But a lot of times people think that those two things get crossed and that they can't be an effective helper and ask for help at the same time. And really that is one of the major things that I try to relay and the peer team tries to relay. Hey, you're going to keep your job. You're going to get back. You might just need a little break, or we can work through this while you're working. And it doesn't mean that you're broken.
So can I ask you, if there's a major incident, do you have like a debriefing episode where you kind of come back and process?
Yep. Our peer team and Brent talked to that, but our peer team has done an amazing job with exactly that. Because so much evidence, we just gave a presentation this morning on that talks about what the recovery rates are for people that don't go through a CISM critical incident debriefing versus those that do.
Yes.
And it's the numbers are amazingly supportive of that being a necessity.
So let me ask this, because I think this is a good question for both, not just first responders. So what can family and friends do to support both first responders or somebody who's in crisis, whether it's suicidal thoughts, whether it's addictions, whether it's a mental illness? What can family and friends do?
Point it out, try and let them, hey, something's going on. Let's get you some help. Help them get that help. Walk them through it. Make the phone call for them. Be that conduit to help. Tell someone that might be able to help. Hey, I think they need help. Do you mind talking to them? I mean, that's what we do as a peer team.
And yeah, I agree. So, I mean, what we know, family support or friend support is the key for success of any treatments. When they do have that strong structure of supporting in their family, is the key, or friends. So, as what we discussed, isolation is the big concern for us. If someone isolates himself or herself, it just makes the situation worse and worse and worse. So we have to prevent that. As a family, walk in, what's happening? Just get involved, and maybe someone, your partner, your significant other, your family member, not just willing to go, but just go and talk and ask for help. Get the expert involved with them and get them out of the isolation. So I do believe they have a very big role, because they are the one that they may see, as you said, first responder, law enforcement at work, they may suppress, but I'm pretty sure when they go home,
We know our
the
partners.
family see that, just this is not the same person. This is just different.
Right.
He's not engaged with me, or she's not engaged. She's not talking. So that's the time he needs just to come and ask for help for the best of the family.
That family support, I believe, plays an accountability role as well. Building, rituals around the reintegration process that I was speaking of earlier. You have to take your uniform off eventually when you get home. You're not that person when you get home. It was once framed as if you were a warrior and you wore armor, that the longer you keep it on, you lean down and give your son or daughter a hug. They feel that armor. They don't feel you, and you don't really feel them. So taking your uniform off is just one of those rituals. Relationships. There's absolutely nothing wrong with seeing a therapist when there's nothing wrong, because you're developing a relationship with a therapist. You're holding each other accountable with somebody that is licensed and credentialed, and that keeps that family unit together. And suicides, they did a study a while back that they said in the first responder community that it wasn't the bad calls that were the source of the suicide. It was family relations, which puts us right in with the general population. So we're not that much different, in that sense. So relationships are absolutely huge, and thank you for that question. So
I really agree with what you say now, because, trying to solve something after it's already broke is more difficult than being able to prevent something. And so that communication is going to be key. If we don't have that communication before, it's going to be even more difficult after, but still possible.
And the mental health maintenance, like changing oils, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And good oil.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, again, thank you all for joining us today. I appreciate your input. For all of you that joined us on Facebook Live, thank you. The one thing I think the whole panel here, I can speak for all of us, to say, if you're out there, you are not alone. Please reach out. Please stop by any of our agencies, call the suicide hotline, walk in our front doors. But we are all here to help you. So if you don't know, reach out to one of our organizations. And real quick, on Saturday at the Reno Town Mall, there'll be a resource fair. So if you don't know where to go, Saturday from 10 to 1, show up there, and there'll be resources for more than just mental health. But please stop by. And again, thank you all for joining my panel. I appreciate it. This is an important topic. And thank you all. Remember, hit your like button, and so you can receive notifications. Send in your questions. If some came up afterwards, please send them in and we'll answer them. And again, thank you for joining us. Stay safe and have a great day.